In week 16 of pregnancy, I traveled from Boulder, Colorado to Chile for a 10K race up some steep trails in the Andes Mountains. Traveling the world for races is extremely fun, but it also comes with a lot of challenges. This travel was definitely a challenging one. My first flight from Denver to Dallas was delayed, so I missed my next flight from Dallas to Santiago. There's only one flight from Dallas to Santiago a day, and the flight the next day was full, so I had to rebook my flight to go to Miami the next day and then Santiago. Luckily, I'm from Dallas and my family still lives there, so I got to see my mom, dad, sister, and grandma. If I had to have travel problems, this was the best way to do it. Also during this travel, the race guide was sent out, which is usually sent way before this or seen on the race website, but this was the first time I was seeing this information, and I learned that bib pickup was an hour away from the race, which was up in a ski town, and there was some mandatory equipment I needed that I hadn't packed. My plan was to fly into Santiago and take a ski van up to the race site in the Parva, so I had no way to get my bib number or mandatory gear. I got lucky and my driver, Gonzalo, is the MVP of this trip and offered to drive me to bib pickup where I could also buy the gear I needed before we drove up to La Parva. We grabbed the bib and then Gonzalo held on tight and absolutely floored it up this tiny winding road up the mountain to La Parva. I never get car sick, and I don't know if it was pregnancy, climbing from sea level to 9,000 feet, or being super tired and dehydrated from travel, but I was about 2 minutes away from throwing up everything in me when we finally got to where I was staying. This travel was pretty stressful, and I was super relieved and thankful when we finally reached La Parva. I took a quick nap and got some food, and then I went for a hike. The first day after big travel like this, I usually do a really light and easy shakeout or hike. Something to loosen up my legs, but also something that's really light and easy since travel takes a toll on my body. To keep today easy, I went for a hike since La Parva is so high in altitude and everything around is really steep. I started off tight and tired, but it felt so nice to move again, and by the end of this hike, I finally felt a little more normal. I got back just in time to watch this beautiful sunset from my apartment and think about how grateful I was to be able to see this gorgeous place. The next day, I was already only 2 days away from the race, but I wanted to explore some of the course and see more of the Andes Mountains, so I headed out for a course scout and adventure. This race is a little over a 10K and has 3,500 feet of climbing and descending. In trail running, there's a type of race called a VK or vertical kilometer that is an uphill-only race 5K or shorter in distance with at least 3,000 feet of climbing. This race is essentially a VK, but we get the downhill too. The other challenge with this race is that it starts at 9,000 feet, so we'll climb up to 13,500 feet during the race. And my personal challenge with this race is also pregnancy. I'm in the second trimester, which has actually felt a lot better than the first. I was lucky to not have much nausea in the first trimester, but I did have a lot of fatigue, and I also had a subchorionic hematoma that caused me to cut my mileage in half for a while, so the second trimester has been a lot smoother. Around week 14 or 15, I started feeling my endurance come back. I'm still running 30 to 45 seconds slower per mile than I normally would, but I feel like I can sustain hard efforts for a long time, which I definitely was not feeling early on in pregnancy. This run was gorgeous, and I took it really easy, knowing that I had a race coming up soon, but it was so fun to get to explore, and day 2 in the Andes was incredible. Today was the day before the race, and the athletes running in the Skyrunner World Series race made it up to La Parva. The Skyrunner World Series is a race series put on by my shoe sponsor, Merrell. They have races all over the world, and athletes gain points each race that count toward their final ranking for the season. These races are in really epic places, and the races are typically around 5 or 6 hours long, so I'm not doing races that are part of the Skyrunner World Series this year, but at some of the Skyrunner races, they have a 10K or 15K along with the race, so I'm doing some of those races this year. These races are all over the world, and the athletes that race them come from all over too, so it was really fun to get to meet some of my Merrell teammates from different countries. We did a short run in the flattest place we could find and got ready to race the next day. And finally, it was race day. I was really excited to race, and my legs were feeling really good for race day. The race was so close to where I was staying that I was able to warm up by jogging to the start line, and then we were off. I had no idea what the competition would look like in this race, and during pregnancy, it's also been really hard to predict how I'm going to feel in a race, so I decided to pay really close attention to my effort and use that to guide me during this race. In races that are steep like this with only one climb, it's normal to be breathing really heavily from the start, and I found that normally I can push really hard and max my lungs out on a climb like this and still have the legs to push the downhill in the second half. Basically, I max out my lungs in the first half, and since running downhill is aerobically easy, my legs are what's pushed in the second half. I started off this race with the top 3 women in the first half mile, but started separating myself after that and tried to stick with some of the men instead. Eventually, the race really spread out and I wasn't running with anyone, but there was an 18K race that had started before us and was going up the same course, so once we started catching up to them, I was able to focus on passing the next person ahead, and I tried to distract myself by all the beautiful mountains around too. The first mile of this course was pretty runnable, but when we got to the really steep sections and got higher up in altitude, a lot of this race turned into a power hike. These trails were also really sandy, so the combination of the steepness, sand, and altitude really made this a slow course and challenging race. I finally made it to the top, and it was time for the descent. The other unique thing about this race that I've never experienced in a race was that the uphill and downhill were on the same trail. It was an out and back course. So while I was running down, most of the race was still going up, which made passing a little more difficult. Luckily, we were so high that although there were better parts of the trail to run on, there weren't any trees along the path, so you could usually find a way to safely pass on the downhill. I usually love the downhills and love pushing them, but in pregnancy, my steps haven't felt quite as stable in the downhills, and I'm really being careful not to have big falls on the trail this year, so I only half sent the downhill, but it was still enough to grab the win today. The race was over, but I still had one more really important thing to do before I left Chile, and that was to find a souvenir for our baby. I went to get something for baby from everywhere we traveled together this year, so Gonzalo drove me back to Santiago, and then I headed to some artisan shops in Santiago where everything is handmade by artists. I was on the hunt to find the cutest llama or alpaca I could find, and eventually, after searching through all the shops, I found the perfect one. That was a really fun race. I'm so thankful that I've been able to travel internationally some and just race a little bit and push a little bit too, because I had no idea how I was going to feel during pregnancy and what running was going to look like during pregnancy. Over the past few months, there have definitely been times that I felt frustrated about the things that I normally can do that I can't right now, but I'm realizing that there are about 10,000 reasons to be grateful for what my body can do and is doing right now, and that gratitude is now definitely outweighing the frustration. I also can't quite put into words how special it feels to be carrying this little baby along with me everywhere I go this year as he or she is being knit together, and so that's been just a really special part of this year, just feeling like I have a little adventure buddy going with me everywhere I go. And up next, I'm back in Colorado training again. I'm training toward a much faster and a little bit longer race in California called the Big Alta 28K, so it's on some really smooth and fast trails, so switching gears a little bit into some faster and longer racing, but really excited for that, really excited to get in a good training block and train a little bit toward that and see what I can do out on those trails, so stay tuned for that. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please make sure to like and subscribe for more running content and adventure in the trails, and I'll see you next time.